No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 449. Good evening. Breaking right now, slippery Starmer attacks Tommy Robinson in Parliament as he calls on the Conservative Party to sack frontbencher Nick Timothy for rightly condemning Sadiq Khan's Islamist takeover of Trafalgar Square yesterday as a display of dominance. Once again, our corrupted Prime Minister is proving how much he hates native Christian Brits, the people he's meant to represent.
We're going to break the record for the biggest iftar, not just in London, not just in UK, not just in Europe, but in the Western world. And
Mr. Speaker, even Tommy Robinson, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, has said today that if the Shadow Justice Secretary had made these hateful comments 2 years ago, the Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Failure to condemn and sack the Shadow Justice Secretary for the poison and division that he spreads.
Well, Tommy Robinson, he's not taking that lying down.
Now, if this would have been 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, no MP would have said anything like this. You know why? Because the left had the monopoly. They would have absolutely crucified him. The Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Do you know why now they can say this? Because of you. Because you took to the streets in your millions.
But here's the thing, Starmer is in his death throes, and Rayner the tax evader and Zack Palansky the tip whisperer are now conspiring to destroy him together. And in a terrifying sign of what's to come, the Green Party leader has today promised to legalise drugs, re-enter the EU, and wipe off all student debt, which would bankrupt the country overnight by costing us at least £150 billion. That's just for the debt, by the way. The good news is he's still haunted by his breast enlargement stunt lies.
When I did that article with The Sun, and I apologise again, and I think people largely see that we're more than one mistake.
In The Sun last week where a client came to see me who was a journalist, and we had a successful project. She says that she grew 4 inches. It didn't change her cup size. She stayed the same cup size, but she said it was a tighter fit.
What this all means as the disunited kingdom is about to surge even further to the communist left in my digest next. Then a giant superstar panel of giants to debate all of this. Father Calvin Robinson, he is host of Reclaim the Media's Fox and Father. Conservative social media sensation Hannah Kirkpatrick of Hannah's World. Reform UK political commentator Kane Blackwell. And ex-Boris Johnson advisor and so much more, Thomas Corbett Dillon. Also coming up on the show today, a massive political row breaks out over whether King Charles should still go on a state visit to the USA after Donald Trump's scathing criticism of slippery Starmer. GB News is raised in Parliament as it's plunged into a white genocide row because of very sound comments made by the guest who you just saw there on our superstar panel today, Thomas Corbett Dillon. He'll respond to the new attacks on him for stating the truth. And the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor scandal grows as accusations about him and a 15-year-old girl go viral amid claims the royal family want the disgraced Duke to remove himself from the line of succession. Then we're going to head over to Substack for the Royal Uncancelled after show where there are more shocking revelations. They're great, by the way, emerging from this new Tom Bower book and a damning Variety Hollywood profile of Meghan Markle. We will have all the latest over on Substack with Royal YouTube sensation P. Diner at www.outspoken.live. My superstar panel have nominated for Greatest Britain and Union Jackass today. You can vote right now for the worst Britain in the world. That is in the live chat on YouTube. But here are the nominees. Father Calvin Robinson has gone for Sadiq Khan for Islamifying London. Thomas Corbett Dillon has gone for Tina Fey. He says, we just know the new UK SNL is going to be awful. And Kane Blackwell has gone for Rachel Reeves for praising Canada and Norway for increasing their oil and gas production, while the UK public have to deal with some of the highest energy bills in the world because we are not using our own natural resources. We could be self-sufficient in gas. So there are your nominees. Hannah Kirkpatrick will nominate for Greatest Britain later in the show. Do keep your comments and votes coming in as well. I'll share some of the best before we go today. But now, let's go. Ordinary Brits up and down the country terrified about what the Islamist takeover of the United Kingdom means for our safety, our rights, our culture, our way of life. We looked on with horror as Sadiq Khan boasted about taking over the heart of our capital city, a place that once hosted VE Day celebrations with the biggest iftar the Western world has ever seen, and what I am convinced was clearly an attempt to express domination over the native Christian population.
Break the record for the biggest iftar, not just in London, not just in UK, not just in Europe, but in the Western world. And
Mr. Speaker, even Tommy Robinson, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, has said today that if the Shadow Justice Secretary had made these hateful comments 2 years ago, the Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Failure to condemn and sack the Shadow Justice Secretary for the poison and division that he spreads.
Now, in a credit to the Conservative Shadow Justice Secretary Nick Timothy, he joined people like myself, like Rupert Lowe, like Tommy Robinson, in pointing out exactly why we must now stand against such obvious displays of domination by a religion that we must never forget wants to destroy us. And there was Nick Timothy's original post, and it is a position that I think is completely understandable. But given Slippery Starmer is now in a political fight for survival versus the Islamist Green Party, he saw a sick political opportunity in PMQs today as he both attacked Tommy Robinson while using the Unite the Kingdom activist to attack the Conservative Party for telling the truth.
Asking those questions should have been his job. Why did he fail to do his duty?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, so her position is that the Shadow Justice Secretary is defending British values when he says Muslims praying together in Trafalgar Square are not welcome. Mr. Speaker, even Tommy Robinson, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, has said today that if the Shadow Justice Secretary had made these hateful comments 2 years ago, the Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Now, Tommy Robinson isn't some sort of moral signpost. He was pointing out how much their party has changed. They're more inclined to his views, and he's right about that. The fact that he's sitting on her front bench shows she's too weak and has got absolutely no judgment.
The Prime Minister wants to talk about my leadership. I'm shocked because his former deputy has just fired the starting gun on the race to replace him. And I'll tell him one thing. She and I both agree that this weak man should be replaced by a strong woman.
Starmer, who hired Peter Mandelson, remember, which is what Kemi Badenoch was asking about, would sack Nick Timothy for pointing out the truth that we all know about yesterday's revolting show of Islamist dominance.
The Prime Minister told us on the record, and I quote, "I believed the lies he told me." If the Prime Minister didn't speak to him, how can he say he lied to him?
Prime Minister. Speaker, the process is clear. It's been looked at by the independent adviser. And she asked me about the process and judgment on appointments. She appointed the Shadow Justice Secretary. He said last night that Muslims praying in public, including the Mayor of London, practising his faith, are not welcome. He described it as an act of domination, straight from the Islamist playbook. If we're in my team, he'd be gone. It's utterly appalling. She should denounce his comments and she should sack him.
He wants to talk about justice secretaries. His justice secretary is abolishing jury trials. My shadow justice secretary is defending British values. I know who I would rather have sitting on the front bench next to me, and it's not him.
But Starmer, he was determined to stick to this topic. She wasn't raising it. He wanted to. And it's because he refuses to see the threat that Islam poses to us.
Mandelson had twice been fired for dishonesty. So why did the Prime Minister believe Peter Mandelson over the vetting documents?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, she asked about leadership. When I see religious events in Trafalgar Square, when I see Hindus celebrating Diwali, when I see Jews celebrating Hanukkah live, when I see Christians performing the Passion of Christ, or Muslims praying, that shows the great strength of our diverse city and country. I've never heard her party call out anything other than the Muslim events. It's only when Muslims are praying. The only conclusion is the Tory party has got a problem with Muslims.
And of course, that's why Starmer wants to make the sort of talk that I am having right now illegal. He even went further, describing criticism of what happened in Trafalgar Square, completely legitimate criticism, by the way, of a religion, as poison.
Mr. Speaker, add to that the failure to condemn and sack the Shadow Justice Secretary for the poison and division that he spreads. It's turning out to be quite a month for the Leader of the Opposition, who claims she never makes any mistakes.
Well, Tommy Robinson, by the way, wasn't taking Starmer's attack lying down, responding, "If you think our Unite the Kingdom rallies have no impact, listen to this, living rent-free in the Prime Minister's head. Join us on May the 16th. We demand a general election. We're not waiting for 3 more years of these scumbags destroying our country." And he made this video expressing how brave members of the public, you, are the people who have shifted the Overton window on the issue of Islam. Watch.
I want to use this to congratulate, where am I? Blaze Green Room. But I want to congratulate and thank every patriot, everyone who stood up, everyone who refused to be silenced, everyone who played their part in shifting the Overton window so far, so much, that a Conservative Member of Parliament now feels comfortable to state these facts. Now, if this would have been 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, no MP would have said anything like this. You know why? Because the left had the monopoly. They would have absolutely crucified him. The Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Do you know why now they can say this? Because of you. Because you took to the streets in your millions. You have given confidence to people to speak the truth and know that there's support for that truth, for that feeling, for that pride, for that courage, for all of it. It's there now. You did it. Every one of you did it. People said, what's the point in these rallies, these demonstrations? Conversations that are now being had, whether it be by this MP in the Conservative Party, and fair play and well done to him, or whether it be from Restore Britain, whether it be from Advance, whether it be from Nigel Farage, whoever it's from, these things have happened because they now have confidence, because they see it.
Yeah, he's right. And so they're panicking. They're all panicking. The fake news agents have even had to admit that what Tommy Robinson said there is indeed correct. Of course, they're not happy about it.
So just to clarify, Trafalgar Square has been used for Sikhs to celebrate their festivals, by Jews to celebrate Hanukkah, their festivals. It has been used by Christians and by no denomination at all. But only when the Muslims went to pray in the last week of Ramadan did it strike a chord into the Shadow Justice Secretary's heart that he felt the need to tweet.
I think this has to be viewed in the light of a wider radicalisation on the right of British politics. I think Tommy Robinson's right. I think not often you say that, particularly on this show, but, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you probably wouldn't have had the Shadow Justice Secretary saying something like this, basically saying that it's okay to be Muslim in this country as long as you're quiet about it and we don't see you. That's basically what the kind of critique is of saying this is an act of domination. But I think that not just in the Conservative Party, but on the right of British politics generally, we see again and again use the phrase, Emily, one of our favourites, the Overton window is shifting and shifting and shifting.
Well, now it's Tommy Robinson telling us about the Overton window.
We're going to have to
the phrase. That's a change of the Overton window, isn't it?
Tommy's window.
You can titter away all you want, mateless, but we're waking up. We are waking up. And what I do find somewhat hopeful today is that Nick Timothy, the man who sparked all of that deranged outrage from our corrupted Prime Minister, hasn't backed down. So the woke wet ex-Attorney General Dominic Grieve posted on X a major attack on Nick Timothy, saying that he's completely wrong. And he indeed even went on LBC, the Labour Broadcasting Company, as I call it, to say that anyone who dared to speak the truth about Trafalgar Square is wrong. Watch.
You've got to get a sense of perspective. My concern is I'd like to live in a harmonious society. I believe firmly that Britain is underpinned actually by Christian values. I've always believed that they are humane values largely stem
but he's
from
clearly
a Christian origin.
He's arguing that is at risk because of this.
Well, let's put it this way. He may legitimately argue that there are religious groups which have different cultural outlooks, but either he intends to persecute and suppress them, or he intends to engage with them to say where he differs with them. And one thing is absolutely clear, all must enjoy equality under the law. And in that tweet, he was denying a law-abiding group of people equality under the law.
But rather than backing down, here's the difference. Rather than being sacked by Kemi Badenoch, Nick Timothy has stood his ground today. This is how he responded to Dominic Grieve. The willful misunderstanding of this post says everything about the people behind the Islamophobia definition. The point is not that Sikhs have danced on Trafalgar Square or that the Passion Play has been hosted there. Neither is the point that Muslims gathered on Trafalgar Square. The point is that mass ritual prayer in public, in this case next to a church, is an act of domination. So is the public call of the Adhan, which explicitly denies other religions, including Christianity. That is the difference, and yet neither Dominic nor the Labour MPs who were instructed by Number 10 to attack me last night will engage with the substance. Instead, he claims he knows my personal views when we haven't talked and incorrectly describes me as a spokesman for the Free Speech Union. People like Dominic can't work out why the ideological world they built is falling apart. They never pause to wonder if perhaps they might have got things badly wrong. Now, Starmer doesn't believe what he's saying. He is doing this entirely for political reasons. And what are those political reasons? Well, again, you won't hear about it in the mainstream media, but it is because he has been outflanked on the left by Rayner, the tax evader who wants his job, and Zack Palansky, the tit whisperer. And that dastardly pair are now conspiring to destroy Starmer altogether. His former deputy prime minister isn't even really pretending to hide her ambitions anymore. She has said that Labour is running out of time to change course in a direct challenge to Sir Keir Starmer's leadership. According to The Telegraph, in her strongest criticism of the Prime Minister to date, the former deputy urged him to change direction or face defeat at the ballot box, warning that their party had come to resemble the establishment since taking power. Rayner also denounced the government's migration reforms as un-British. Her comments came in a speech to Mainstream, a soft left pressure group with ties to Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester. But far more terrifying is the tit whisperer himself, Zack Polansky, whose fucked up coalition with the Islamists is shifting British politics to the hard left. And in a truly bonkers speech today, I watched the whole thing so that you don't have to, at the New Economics Foundation, Polansky made clear, and again, this is not getting enough attention in the mainstream media given his position in the polls, that he is going to bankrupt the United Kingdom if he is anywhere near the levers of power. And trust me, that's not as mad as it sounds. So this is what he intends to do. Write off all student debt. That would cost us at least £158 billion.
Like to have debt forgiveness. How we do that, though, is a more nuanced and complex conversation. And I'll be looking at organisations like the New Economics Foundation alongside other think tanks to keep working on models on that.
Well, no, there is no model. There is no model. And I mean, by the way, that £158 billion, that's a conservative figure. I mean, there's currently £250 billion owed in student debt. He wants to write it all off. Polansky will also rejoin the European Union, overturning the biggest democratic vote in British history.
And yes, I do want to see us rejoin the European Union. I think there's other questions about would they want us back? How does that look? How do we negotiate and manage that? I don't think the European Union's perfect. And in fact, since we left it, there is a worrying trend towards hard-right prime ministers and presidents across the European Union that I don't think should just be dismissed. But more widely, when I look holistically at the question, I think we're much better building our relationships with our European neighbours, including rejoining the customs union, because ultimately we need to make sure we're protecting businesses and making sure we have that wider conversation that, yes, one day I do want to see us rejoin the European Union.
Polansky also admitted he will legalise drugs, something he slammed Rachel from accounts for not agreeing to do, even though it's perhaps the only sane thing she has actually done as Chancellor.
Then on drugs, first thing to say is I think the Prime Minister, his comments were disgusting. Drug deaths have increased every single year in this country for the last 13 years. We have the highest drug death rate in Europe. So the very least I would expect from a Prime Minister or any serious politician when they're talking about drugs is to recognise that we have a public health crisis, and that should be spoken about with dignity, with sensitivity and with care. What we got from the Prime Minister is cheap political attacks to try and win the Gorton and Denton by-election. They'll probably have noticed we still won with a 4,000 majority. So those political attacks don't work. But much more seriously, they debase the conversation we need to have about harm reduction and about speaking to public health professionals to make sure they're involved in that conversation. In terms of legalising cannabis, there was a report out this week, I think, that it's one of the things that the civil service suggested to Rachel Reeves rather than cutting winter fuel payments. The fact that she wouldn't even entertain that conversation and was more content to allow pensioners to really, really suffer and to face the adverse risks of a freezing winter rather than even have a conversation about drug legalisation demonstrates how distant this government are from the serious conversations and the plans that need to happen.
Oh, by the way, he would also drive anyone rich out of the country forever by implementing a wealth tax.
I briefly want to talk about tax and who we're going to tax and why. Look, we know a wealth tax won't fix everything, and no one has ever pretended it would, but it would be a very good place to start. Implementing a 1% tax on wealth over £10 million and 2% on £1 billion would raise around £15 billion per year. And it would send a very clear message that those who have accumulated the most money will pay a little bit more. Get that money flowing through the economy. Make sure it is benefiting everyone. For a truly progressive government, a wealth tax needs to be a day one priority.
Now, of course, all of this Polansky stuff is mad. I get that. I know you're thinking this is mad. But why it matters is because the tail is now wagging the dog in British politics. Labour has to go where Polansky leads them. And the only hope that we actually have to stop Polansky, by the way, is to remind the world that he is a total liar and a complete fraud who isn't even called Zack, he's called Dave, and he used to make money by convincing women that he could increase their breast size through hypnotism. This sounds mad, but it is his biggest weak spot with the British public. As the Daily Telegraph reported today, and these shock new poll findings show, his claim that he could enlarge women's breasts through hypnotherapy has put people off voting for the Green Party. A poll by More in Common found that a third of voters, 33%, would consider voting for the Greens. But, this is big, that figure fell to 16%. Once voters were told about remarks made by Polansky, who leads the insurgent hard-left party. In 2013, Polansky, who was a hypnotherapist on Harley Street before entering politics, offered to enlarge a Sun journalist's breasts. The Green Party leader has always claimed he was misrepresented and apologised for the comments. Polansky said he used a BBC interview the day after the Sun article appeared to apologise. According to the BBC, however, the corporation has been unable to locate an interview with the Greens leader from that day. Instead, the broadcaster said Mr. Polansky spoke to BBC Humberside 6 days after the Sun article was published, in which he appeared to stand by his claim, saying the evidence is growing. So all of this really matters, and I've got the evidence here, because not only did Polansky lie to the poor lady from The Sun. I was executive editor of The Sun at the time, and he wasn't even a political figure, by the way. This was a consumer investigation to try and stop this type of dastardly trade on Harley Street. And not only did he lie to the woman at the time about being able to increase the size of her boobs via hypnotism, he is still lying even now about how he acted in response to that Sun article. Well, today, and I will give them credit where it's due, The British Bashing Corporation did ask Zack Palansky about his tit-whispering lie, and he apologised again. Watch this.
I apologised 30 years ago when I did that article with The Sun, and I apologise again. And I think people largely see that we're more than one mistake. In fact, one of my favourite politicians, Tony Benn, died 12 years ago this week, and he said, "I don't care where you're coming from, I care where you're going." And so I think it's important when you make a mistake to own up to it, and I absolutely do that. And I apologise for that. I've apologised several times, and I think most people are interested in how I'm going to lower bills. So to come to your second question, it's really important to recognise people are worried right now about their energy bills, and they're right to be worried.
No, but he can't just move the conversation on because it's not good enough. He did lie at the time. This is the BBC interview in question 6 days after that Sun article appeared. Listen to what he said
in the
carefully.
Sun last week, where a client came to see me who was a journalist, and we had a successful project. She says that she grew 4 inches. It didn't change her cup size. She stayed the same cup size, but she said it was a tighter fit. There's starting to become anecdotal evidence, at least, of growth in breast size.
So they actually grew?
Yep. At the moment, I'm not charging people for breast enhancement. That's just a.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Do you believe it can happen or not?
I believe that it can happen in theory, and I think it's definitely.
Okay, so do you understand what I'm saying here? Polansky claims that he went on the British Bashing Corporation the day after the Sun article appeared to apologise. He didn't. That interview didn't exist. It's a total lie. He went on 6 days later and stood by the fact that he was able to increase a women's breast by 4 inches, even though it didn't go up a whole cup size. And he has changed his tune.
Do you still believe that women's breasts...
If you just listen to the LBC interview...
Do you still believe that women's breasts can be enlarged through hypnotherapy?
I've never believed that. That doesn't represent my work or anything I've ever done, and you shouldn't believe what you read in The Sun.
Right, so you didn't charge £222 for a 90-minute session where you got women to visualise themselves with bigger breasts?
No, I absolutely have never charged for that. As I say, don't read what you've...
You have held those sessions in which you have asked women to visualise themselves with bigger breasts through hypnotherapy in order to see them enlarged?
As I've said, none of that represents my work, and I wouldn't believe what you read in The Sun.
How many women did you have come to you to see whether you could get them through hypnotherapy to have their breasts enlarged?
Absolutely none. And so that is not a service. Well, that was something that The Sun wrote about. But as I said, I think most of your listeners will know The Sun come up with wild and wonderful stories all the time.
So what have you apologised for if The Sun have made it up?
I apologised immediately the day after the article 11 years ago to say that doesn't represent my work and that I don't stand by that article. I apologise because I recognise that would be offensive to people, but again, does not represent my work and does not represent me.
So you did, though, have women come through your door doing hypnotherapy on them to see if they could enlarge their breasts?
Well, you asked me a different question. You asked me if I ever charged for that. No, I didn't.
Well, the other question I asked was how many women did you see trying this particular form of hypnotherapy?
That, other than that article, which was not representative of my work, is something that I never have and never would do.
Now, I understand it is completely mad that this guy has a political career at all, let alone the fact he's now driving government policy. But that's where we're at, and we've got to keep the pressure on. Now, the Superstar panel. Thomas Corbett-Dillon, Kane Blackwell, Hannah Kirkpatrick, Father Calvin Robinson, all with me now. Father Calvin, absolutely shocking to see the way Slippery Starmer was so desperate in PMQs today to attack Nick Timothy. Effectively, he's going all out now, isn't he, for the Islamist vote?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Labour already have been going all out for the Islamist vote. What's interesting to me is that the Conservatives are finally waking up to the threat of Islam. I've known Nick Timothy a long time, and we've had lots of back and forths. He had a go at me once for referring to Rishi Sunak as a heathen on GB News, which is technically true. But it's good to see these people waking up to the threat of Islam, because in the last decade, Mohammedanism has grown 44% in our country. They make up 5 to 6 million of the people. 5 to 6 million of the people in our country. That's a big issue, because we have to address the fact that we may be multicultural, we may be multi-faith, but how multicultural and how multi-faith do we want to be? When we have great big displays of Islam taking over the center of our capital, we have to ask the question, is this appropriate? So it's nice to see some people in the Conservative Party, at least, asking those questions. To hear slippery Starmer trying to use Tommy Robinson as a shoehorn to attack the Conservatives is hilarious, just as it is to hear Lewis Goddell quoting Tommy Robinson. The Overton window surely has shifted if this is becoming normal conversation. But the question isn't about freedom of worship or freedom of religion, because we've always had that in our country. The question is a particular religion taking over? Is it becoming more dominant in an explicitly Christian country? And if it is, then we need to address that. Yes, we have equality under the law, but does it work in practice? When they already have Sharia courts, I think 85 Sharia courts up and down the country, where they have their own legal system in practice, there's no equality under the law there. So maybe we should have Christian privilege. Maybe Christians should be treated differently under the law, in that Christians can have public processions, but people of other faiths can't. In a Christian country, that makes sense. We'd see that in Islamic countries, we'd see that in other faith countries. Why can't we have special privilege in our country too?
Indeed. Now, Thomas Corbett Dillon, you are helping to shift this Overton window with your white genocide comments on GB News, getting all of the chattering classes up in arms. But what do you make of the fact that Starmer seems absolutely desperate to raise Tommy Robinson now?
Yeah, obviously that was controversial, I suppose you could say, but I think everyone seems to have agreed with me, so that's good. I found out it was only 24 complaints to Ofcom, and the Guardian were furious, but I say that's pretty good. If I can get 24, that's not too bad. But no, I mean, look, I live in the US, and every time I am forced to watch this charade of prime minister's questions where they're just like saying stupid things to each other, and it's just so embarrassing. I'm like, these are the two people that represent our country. Americans used to love watching prime minister's questions. Now we've just got two idiots just saying rubbish to each other. It's awful. But yes, for some reason, the prime minister seems to care more about Muslims. And we don't really have that much of a Muslim problem in the US yet. I have no idea what a iftar or whatever it is he's saying is. I have no idea what that is. I'm so happy I have no idea what that is. Seems to me that everyone in England is now experts on Ramadan and all these things, which just shows you how much Islam is being pushed over there.
Very good
so I
point.
think it is time that British people have got to push back.
Yeah, I'd be very happy if I didn't know what iftar and Ramadan meant. Hannah Kirkpatrick, you're a big Tommy Robinson supporter. What did you make of his response today, which was that actually it's the people, it's the all of, the hundreds of thousands or actually millions, if you don't believe the official figures like I certainly don't, who showed up to UTK that have made this difference?
Oh, I absolutely agree with him that the Overton window has indeed shifted. And I, for one, am glad that I started speaking out because the messages I get from other people are, thank you, you've given me confidence to speak out. I'm doing it too. And that's just me getting those messages. Imagine about all of the people like us that are doing the videos that we have been doing and mentioning the Islamic takeover and showing up to the UTK events. It is making a difference. And it's nice to hear him say that, I would say, because it was an act of dominance, I feel. And I feel like the Tories were completely right on that. But the thing I love the most is that the fake news media and everybody is forced to use the headline, Keir Starmer agrees with Tommy Robinson. And that's all I needed today.
Yeah, totally. Now, Kane Blackwell, you were one of those Tory defectors to Reform UK. Did you make a mistake, Kane? Because actually, what I'm hearing from Nick Timothy is much, much more powerful than what I'm hearing from Nigel Farage on the issue of Islam.
Well, what I'd say is Tommy Robinson is right when he says 2 years ago you wouldn't be able to say this.
Oh, God, Nigel's going to boot you out of the party for that.
Well, no, but it's true. The Conservative Party, you wouldn't be able to say that in the Conservative Party. My point is, though, is that the Conservative Party is only jumped with the bandwagon now. And that's why people have left the Conservative Party and gone for other parties like Reform or wherever else, because there is a real alternative now. And the fact is that it's been too little, too late. And that's the problem with the Conservative Party. It's all well and good Nick Timothy and others saying this now, but quite frankly, what they've done over the last 14 years, I think is terrible for this country. And they still can't admit that they broke it. That's the problem. And I agree with Nick Timothy. I think he's right on this topic. But
yeah,
I mean,
things have.
The Conservative Party is the way forward.
Look, you can't deny things have changed. Things have changed for the better, in part because of the types of conversations we're having here. I mean, Father Calvin Robinson, remind me why you were booted out of the Conservative Party again?
Indeed, I was kicked out just before I left the country for two reasons. One was for being friends with Tommy Robinson, and the other was for being seen as anti-Islam. How far have they come?
Yeah, indeed. But I guess we have to celebrate it, right? We have to celebrate the changes that happen, because otherwise you can look back bitterly, as we sometimes do, and say, yep, we were treated really badly. And I mean, by the way, Father Calvin, they should apologize to you and they should welcome you back into the party with open arms. I don't question that for a single second, but the change is a really good thing. We see the change happening, the Overton window shifting every single day. And Thomas Corbett Dillon, our guest today, certainly managed to do that by dropping the sort of truth bomb on GB News that broadcaster hasn't liked in recent months, certainly hasn't liked since the departure of myself and Father Calvin Robinson, Lawrence Fox and Mark Stein from the channel. But it was a brilliant moment in my view, and I will show it to you in just one moment. But first, it has sparked major criticism from both the left and the right. Anaya Falaran Aman, writing in Spiked Online today, that talk of a white genocide is morally grotesque. What? She says today, a genocide of indigenous people is just as likely to be used to describe the supposed ethnic cleansing of white Europeans as it is an event from centuries ago. Take a recent viral GB News clip featuring someone called Thomas Corbett Dillon, introduced as a former Boris Johnson advisor. Corbett Dillon declared that there is a genocide happening on this island because it is being taken over by different people who are not indigenous to the land. That pundits are prepared to make such a claim on live TV is a sign of just how normalised elements of the so-called Great Replacement theory have become among parts of the right. The likening of abortion rates or high levels of net migration to the most horrendous event in human history may be grim, but it serves a propagandistic purpose to dress up, in this case, demographic change as a form of genocide that demands extreme action, hence extremist right-wingers' fantasies of total remigration, the removal of all non-whites from Western countries. And what's interesting is that the woke left are uniting with the likes of Falaran over this issue. Look at how the fake news agents were left totally aghast by what Thomas Corbett Dillon said.
You know, in Birmingham in England, you've got the Muslims that basically just live in there. They all speak the same language. They live in their own little world. You don't really get that in America. When people move to this country, they tend to integrate pretty well. You kind of embrace America. There's not been much embracing of British values among these communities. And I hate this idea that England is just like a no man's land. It's like, no, there is an indigenous population that have lived on that island for thousands of years. And, you know, if this was happening in any other place around the world, everyone would be defending and saying, wow, there's a genocide happening in this island because it is being taken over by different people that are not indigenous to that land.
What the actual fuck? I mean, I'm flabbergasted. The idea, well, genocide, isn't that a little bit harsh? A little bit far? Well,
that's balance, isn't it? I mean, a little bit far.
I mean, how many tens of thousands of indigenous Brits have lost their lives in this slaughter that has taken place, which seems to have passed me by? Maybe there's a conspiracy by all the conventional news channels that we haven't been covering the mass murder of Britons on the streets by foreign invaders.
Oh, no, there's been no genocide of the English, has there? I mean, we're not going to become a minority in our own country within a couple of decades, are we, John Sopel? Thousands and thousands of young white girls aren't being pillaged and raped and in some cases murdered by Pakistani Muslim men, are they, John Sopel? We're not being subjected to Islamist terror attacks all the time, are we, John Sopel? So I just want to show you the 46 seconds that has both the right and the left so up in arms before we get Thomas Corbett Dillon to see if he's standing by his comments. Watch this.
And this minority, I hate this word minority, but guess what? What is the minority in the world? It is 10% of the world is white people. That is the minority. And once again, another country is being turned into a no longer white nation. You're looking at the same thing they did in South Africa. It's happening happening in Europe, all across Europe, and in 10, 20 years, there will be no white nations left. And then the question is, where do white people go? If there is a genocide against white people, where do they go? There is no more land. So this argument, oh, but isn't it so nice that it would be boring if we didn't have these people? Oh, because what, you can get a curry down the street. Guess what? In 20, 30 years, there will be no white nations left. And I would love to know where you're planning on going when they really turn on us, because it has happened before and it will happen again.
Well, Thomas Corbett-Dillon joins us now, and I have to say, Thomas, I thought your performance was brilliant, and I congratulate you for it. But as myself and Father Calvin Robinson know all too well, those types of truth bombs are not wanted these days on GB News. In the past few hours, they've released a statement saying that they don't agree with your views, but they say they're a free speech channel. Have they cancelled you? Have you heard anything from them? Are you going to be back on GB News? Do you know?
They haven't cancelled me, no, and I think I will be back on GB News. I think they are treating the show that I was on is obviously based in the US. So I think they are trying to push back a little bit towards the Ofcom people and actually, stand up, because, I understand the channel. It is hard when you've got this regulator breathing down your neck all the time, but these comments were made in the US. I have freedom of speech. I'm protected by the US Constitution with my freedom of speech. So I think they're a little bit more willing to stand up this time. So we'll see. I've not been back on yet, but I have plans to be back on, and I am booked to be back on. So we'll see if that goes ahead.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Father C?
I would be very surprised if they have you back on very soon, because they do like to play very cautiously, unfortunately, our former colleagues and friends at GB News. But Thomas, your point is absolutely spot on. Like, a quarter of our country is no longer white British. By 2060, white Britons will be a minority in Britain. And you're quite right that white people are a minority across the world. Half of my family is white British. My mother's lineage is white British. I don't want to see white Brits being wiped out. It is an ethnic genocide. It should be addressed. White people are already a minority in Watford, Luton, Slough, Leicester, major boroughs throughout London. Like, this should be concerning to all white Britons, unless they are suicidal.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Kane Blackwell, little secret, you were once my producer at GB News before
he was one of the good ones.
He was one of the good ones, exactly, before he became a star political commentator in his own right. Kane, you know GB News. Why do they have to release a statement saying we don't agree with this position? Like, it's quite weird, isn't it? Does the channel actually have positions on political issues?
Well, I suppose that's the question, really, is that is the statement necessary? Obviously, they feel that it is to put that distance between. But at the end of the day, if we say we believe in free speech, we believe in free speech. If you agree with the statement or not, and that's the point. We are in a situation where we can debate the conversation, and it's important to have these discussions, because if we don't, then they get swept under the carpet, and these things, just fester, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So it's important to have the conversations, and I think that GB News, should be, I'm pleased that it, aired the episode and everything was, wasn't sort of censored in that sense. But, I think we do need to make sure. But this is why independent media, like your show, Dan, and like so many others, so important, because we can have the discussions. Whether you agree with the statement or you disagree with it, we can all have the discussion, and then the battle
100%.
of ideas.
100%. And that's what the likes of the fake news agents want to shut down. Just before I bring you in, Hannah, let me show you this new reporting from The Guardian today. And I know what The Guardian are trying to do. They are trying to get Thomas removed from GB News. This is what they do. So GB News faces complaints after commentator claimed genocide against white people in the UK. They've literally had 27 complaints, right? I think there were over 8,000 for my whole thing with Lawrence Fox. So 27 complaints is pathetic. But GB News did weigh into this, which I think is silly, really. They should just ignore it. But here's what a spokesperson said. Corbett-Dillon's comments were his own views, not those of the channel, and a range of other views were also expressed in the debate. GB News is committed to free speech and to providing a platform for robust but respectful debate on issues of public interest. Discussions around immigration, integration, and national identity are widely debated in democratic societies, and it is important that different perspectives can be aired and scrutinised. GB News operates in full compliance with the Ofcom broadcasting code and takes its responsibilities as a regulated broadcaster seriously. Okay then, Hannah, my question, and I guess my challenge to GB News is then, why is Tommy Robinson banned? Why is Katie Hopkins banned? Why is Rupert Lowe banned? Like, absolutely, Thomas Corbett-Dillon should be on air. And I really, really hope they do not cancel him. But there are lots of other people who should also be given a voice if their statement is indeed factual.
I completely agree with you. And I must say there's some good things about GB News that I feel, but I fell out of love with them quite a while ago. And it's just impossible to watch it, really. I know we're going to touch on this a little bit later on, I think, with some comments Ed Davies made in Parliament. But it isn't very fair at all. It's not balanced. They are basically a mouthpiece for reform, I feel, at this point, and I just don't like that. And I know personally people that have been blacklisted by being guests and actually cancelled. I hope you don't get cancelled, Thomas. I know you won't. Just for things like they said no thank you, but no thank you to being asked to run as a parliamentary candidate for reform. They didn't have a fallout with him. They just didn't feel that that was right for them. And those people have been blacklisted from appearing on any shows on there. And God forbid, like you said, mentioning Tommy Robinson or Advance or even Rupert Lowe. It's not.
Yeah. So I do have this clip of Ed Davey, but I'll just give a little bit of context as to what Hannah's saying. Basically, hard leftist ex-Guardian editor Alan Rusbridge, one of the worst people in the United Kingdom, has written this big investigation for the New World newspaper. Now, this is a crank newspaper, right? It used to be known as the New European. They're just obsessed with overturning Brexit. And it's a big investigation where they effectively got 20 people to watch hours and hours of GB News content. And they are trying to claim that GB News is not Ofcom compliant, not compliant with the Ofcommunist state regulator. But this was just a typical hit piece on GB News. I mean, Father Calvin Robinson, Lawrence Fox, and myself, we have not been on GB News. What is it now, Father? I mean, come on, it's been 2 years. 2 years. And this article just constantly references us and slags us off within it. And the whole point is this is why GB News should actually never have given in. Because
fair play. I never tried to be balanced, in all honesty. I tried to put goodness and truth.
Did I.
I'm not interested in stuff.
I remember they had a guy. Do you remember that guy, Nick Pollard? He was actually the former boss of Sly News. And they brought him into GB News to try and make us compliant with the Ofcommunists. And I would have stand-up rows with them because I just said, I'm not doing the whole, what do you call it? You know, the other side thing. I'm not devil's advocate. I'm not playing devil's advocate just for the sake of it. So
I had one debate. There was a woman I wanted to get on my show. She'd had an abortion. She was very traumatized by it, and she wanted to share her story. And I was hoping that this might encourage other women who are thinking about their options to choose life, to choose to have their baby. And the off-communists and the people within GB News were saying, no, you must have balance. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you must have someone in favor of abortion on your show. I'm like, this is absurd. If I was talking to a rape survivor, you know, someone who's been traumatized by rape, you wouldn't tell me I have to have balance. I have someone who's in favor of rape. Like, some things don't have to have balance. Some things are objectively good and evil, but they couldn't see it from that lens, unfortunately.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? That is really interesting. And so that's the context in which Ed Davey effectively got up in PMQs today and demanded, and we should all be concerned of this, more state regulation, specifically of GB News. Watch this.
A New World investigation into GB News has found hundreds of shocking breaches of the rules of impartiality and accuracy. Yet Ofcom has repeatedly refused to take action. Andrew Neil says, just as Fox basically became the channel of Donald Trump, it is clear they have turned GB News into the reform channel. Mr. Speaker, we cannot let GB News propaganda turn our great country into their version of Trump's America. Either the government rules aren't fit for purpose, or Ofcom isn't properly enforcing them. Prime Minister, Which is it?
Prime Minister.
Well, he's right to raise an important question of free speech and our media. It is a matter for Ofcom, and it's important that we let them deal with it.
I mean, it's so chilling, Thomas. It is so chilling. And I think you will, I mean, obviously I know you're a Brit, but you've spent a good couple of years now in the US. It's shocking, isn't it, to see the way that they believe they can censor broadcasters.
Yeah, I mean, another example of just a complete idiot in the House of Commons. I mean, this is just, I mean, they really don't understand that freedom of speech is such a founding principle of the United States. And we've seen this recently with the British government, you know, the Ofcom regulators trying to go after things of people have said in America. But, you know, this idea that, because, you know, GB News might have a little bit more right-wing voices on, excuse me, what about the BBC becoming the mouthpiece of the left wing? Or, excuse me, even Sky News, when you've got Beth Rigby saying, oh, our friend Ange, that was sad, she got kicked out, she didn't, like, this, you know, this argument that these people are impartial, it's not the case. It used to be the case. I'd give the BBC credit. Maybe 50 years ago, they had pretty impartial journalists that were able to keep themselves apart from the politics. It is impossible today. Every producer in those newsrooms has a serious bias towards a very particular party, and the fact that it is impossible to be truly impartial and be a journalist anymore. And this idea that these channels are going to be shut down is just, it's madness.
The Liberal Democrats are such a divisive and destructive force in the United Kingdom today. The latest is that they are trying to destroy the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States, which Donald Trump himself has admitted is basically over as a result of slippery Starmer. What's the one thing holding it together? The one thing holding it together? Trump's relationship and love of the British royal family. And this state visit, long planned to the United States of America to commemorate its birthday by King Charles next month, is all of a sudden disgracefully becoming a political hot potato, with Ed Davey's Liberal Democrat Party today tabling an early day motion calling for the Prime Minister, Slippery Starmer, to advise King Charles to cancel his state visit to the US. The text of the motion, which was shared with the Politico Playbook, says that this would ensure His Majesty is not placed in an embarrassing situation given President Trump's ongoing illegal war and disparaging remarks about the UK and other allies who were not consulted on the decision to go to war. Now, you can see the huge issue here. They have no problem whatsoever with King Charles pressing the flesh with Vladimir Zelensky. Let me tell you, a man far, far more corrupt than Donald Trump. Okay? Far, far more corrupt than Donald Trump. But the good news is the Sun's reporting that Sir Keir Starmer is set to ignore these Labour calls to delay the state visit, with plans in the works for an even bigger trip. The 3-day trip is already expected to include Washington and New York, with insiders revealing talks are underway to add a third US city. Nigel Farage has also backed the visit, saying there are considerable tensions between the American president and the British Prime Minister. I would say that makes the King's visit even more imperative. And what you really get to see here is the people who hate the United Kingdom. Secretly, they pretend to be patriots, but they hate us. And the perfect example of that is Emily Thornberry, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. We've known for a long time she hates us, right? Do you remember when she slagged off people who were waving the St. George's flag proudly outside their house to celebrate a football tournament? Well, she's gone on the state broadcaster Radio 4 to advocate for the state visit to be cancelled.
The King's state visit to the US, which is supposed to be happening next month, is it appropriate, do you think, for that to still go ahead with relations being what they are and the situation being what it is?
I think the most important thing is that it will be going, if it was to go ahead next month, and I don't know, the dates haven't been confirmed, but if it was to go, everybody seems to think it's going to be next month. It would go ahead against a backdrop of a war, and that I think is quite difficult. And the last thing that we want to do is to have His Majesty's, their Majesties embarrassed.
Of course, she's talking absolute bullshit. It's about what war this is. Because, as I say, they do not give a damn about using the British royal family and using the king when it comes to this terrible war in Ukraine, which should have ended years ago. And trust me, we need the special relationship to continue. We are so reliant on the United States of America. All of the Trump haters need to get that through their thick heads. And look at the way that he was talking about us yesterday in the Oval Office again. And by the way, I don't even blame him. Look at this.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill. Winston Churchill.
The late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, you know, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Back to the superstar panel, Hannah Kirkpatrick, Kane Blackwell, Thomas Corbett Dillon, and Father Calvin Robinson. Father Calvin, I mean, this feels pretty astonishing to me that these people who claim to care about the United Kingdom because of one war that they disagree with, all of a sudden want to destroy the relationship between the British royal family and Donald Trump. Now, that's so hypocritical, isn't it? Because they keep on using the king when it comes to Zelensky. It makes me feel sick the way they keep on using the king when it comes to Zelensky.
Well, it's hypocritical on multiple levels because they don't even like the royal family. They're not monarchists at all. They want to abolish the royal family. And so to pretend that this is all about making sure they're not embarrassed is just ridiculous. They have an issue with Donald Trump. They have an issue with his government and his policies and his war in Iran. Just be honest about it. You know, I have issues for different reasons, but I'm open about those issues. Like to pretend that the King of England visiting America on a royal visit is somehow going to embarrass the royal family and or Britain because there's a war going on is a remarkable lie. And you point out the double standard there that the Ukraine war has been going on for far too long, and they've been willing to shovel the king out to shake hands with Zelensky, who is the head of one of the most, if not the most corrupt nation in the world.
Thomas Corbett Dillon, what are people saying in Washington, D.C., where you are about this trip?
Yeah, well, as you said, it is literally the last straw of the special relationship being held on. And remember, this is only being held on by the president because he is so proud of his British heritage. He loves that his mother was Scottish. He talks, as you saw yesterday, you know, it was an event with the Irish and he spent all the time talking about Churchill. You know, that upset the Irish, but that's okay. So, you know, the problem here is that this really is the end of the special relationship. When J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, whoever's going to be the next president, maybe Gavin Newsom, hopefully not, who knows, takes over, they have no allegiance to the UK whatsoever. They don't care about the king. They don't care about William. It is done. So if this is not the last chance to bring back the relationship, it is over for good. We will just become another sort of state across there that in the same way that they sort of treat France and Germany, you know, they'll say hi to us, but it's not important. And that is a really sad situation for the UK because we don't have that alliance with Europe like they have. France and Germany are much closer to each other. We don't have a solid ally like that. Our ally is America. And the fact that we are letting this government destroy this over just Keir Starmer, just embarrassing. I saw the president saying, you know, he did a phone call and Keir Starmer said, well, I'll have to check with my team. The president's like, check with your team, just give me an answer. You know, is it yes or no? You're the prime minister. But, you know, it's a different way of governing. So it's sad, but I think it'll go ahead. I think this is for the 250th birthday. I think the king will come. He'll be stupid if he doesn't. And then they'll put on a good show. The Americans always do. But the left, they won't like it, that's for sure.
No, they won't. I mean, the irony, Hannah Kirkpatrick, is that Charles himself probably won't like this. But he's got to do it for us.
He does, and he should do it for us. As Thomas mentioned, Donald Trump is a lover of our country, with obviously his mother from Scotland, and a lover of our royal family. And he does show that every opportunity and say that at every opportunity as well. And we're at a point now, or we always have been, where we're letting TDS dictate policy, and it's just all posturing. It's just ridiculous. I'm at this point of since like nearly 10 years of Donald Trump, I am sick to death of the TDS that is rife with anyone that's against him. You know, so Orange Man bad, but alleged coke fiend grifter Zelensky, the actor. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, not just fine. It's like we have to love him. We've got to be prepared to give away billions and billions and billions of pounds. It's like one war's totally fine, the other's totally wrong. Kane Blackwell, it's interesting, though, the Reform UK position on this. I mean, Nigel Farage, yes, he is advocating for the state visit to go ahead, although a lot of people are saying that Reform is trying to move away from Trump on the issue of the war in Iran.
Well, I mean, no, I'm not a spokesperson for Reform, but what I would say is I think the state visit is so important. I agree with Nigel on that. It is totally right. We need to make sure that America, our closest, greatest ally, they know that we've got their back and they've got our back, because at the end of the day, they're the only ones who are going to save us. And I was speaking to my granddad the other day. He's turned 91 last Monday. And he was saying to me about, remembers the war. And he said, we would not have won that war if it was not for the Americans sending us money and then actually getting involved. And that's what people forget. This special relationship isn't about personalities, isn't about who's in the Oval Office. It's about long-standing, deep-standing tradition and friendship that they have helped with us. So I think that's what people have got to remember. And at the end of the day, Hannah's right. They've got too much Trump derangement syndrome going on. So, they need to have a good knock on their heads, I think.
Breaking today, two massive royal scandals, one of which could result in a historic change to the line of succession. So there are growing reports that the British royal family and King Charles himself is advocating for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to remove himself from the line of succession. So it wouldn't have to be a show of force by the British government in order to do this, while the disgraced Duke is still facing a potential trial on claims of misconduct in public office. The pressure on this is building after a new viral interview, which was conducted a number of months ago by James English, but is only being picked up now. And it's by the prestigious royal author Andrew Lowney, whose book entitled started this whole current downfall of the former Duke of York, suggested that the reason he used to travel overseas to have sex with women was in order to do so with underage teenagers as young as 15 years old, something that, of course, would be illegal in the United Kingdom. Watch the interview, currently being ignored by the mainstream media, but burning up online.
He has dated women of the same age as him, but it was certainly when he was abroad in places like Kazakhstan and Libya, he was involved with much younger girls. How young? Well, I know of some of 15. There could have been some younger. The people that were being trafficked by Epstein to the island, he worked through a man called Jean-Luc Brunel, who ran a model agency in France. And a lot of these girls from France, and particularly from Russia, many of whom didn't speak any English, were 12, 13, 14, that sort of age.
How did Epstein actually get his money? I've interviewed people who says he befriended a billionaire who was dying. He kind of gave him his wealth. People say Epstein worked with the CIA, and they said he was working with a lot of, not an accountant, but he was managing a lot of people's money. He was managing a lot of people's wealth.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, people don't really know. I mean, he was sacked as a maths teacher. He worked in the city for a big company called Bear Stearns and got sacked there. I think he made some very useful connections. There's some suggestion that he met Robert Maxwell, and Robert Maxwell used basically Epstein to hide his money before his death, which is the link then with Ghislaine.
So look, you can see that is a significant movement from Andrew Lowney, who is writing a new paperback version of it entitled, where he does intend to include more of these claims. And he's been very straight there that there was underage sex involving Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Remember, he denies all illegality. And this fits with a new report from Tom Bower, whose book Betrayal about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry is currently causing huge consternation for the royal family too, that King Charles has sent an envoy to deal directly with his brother and urge Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to remove himself from the line of succession. Remember, at the moment, we're in this extraordinary position where Andrew is 8th in line to the throne. He could become king. That's despite the fact he's been investigated by the police and at some point could be charged, face trial, and even end up in jail while remaining in the line of succession. Watch Tom Bauer with The Sun's Harry Cole.
Just on Andrew briefly, he seems to be, he's got there in the end. He's now, he's putting out personal statements under his own name, saying, how shocked he is and he'll work with the police. Do you think that's enough? Obviously, there's talk of stripping Andrew from the succession, but it could take years to get 14 Commonwealth countries to agree on it.
Well, as I understand it, someone went up to Sandringham last Saturday from the palace to suggest to Andrew that he voluntarily gives up the succession.
He
can do that. He can sign a form saying he renounces the succession. That ends it straight away. And that would be the cleanest solution. And as the emissary said, they've given me the dirty work to do. But it's a good thing that they've started it, and that's the way to handle it.
Was there any sign from Andrew that he'd be willing to do that?
Well, I think that he'd been made an offer he can't refuse. Because in the end, he is totally dependent.
On his brother?
Exactly.
I mean, do you think really? I mean, there's talk of him. If any more comes out in the next tranche of the Epstein files, and any more pictures, any more the concept of him even being in Britain is going to be quite alien to.
Well, I think he's got to stay in Britain. I mean, it'd be dangerous if he'd be in Dubai right now.
Well, no, dangerous for everyone in Dubai.
He'd be out of control. I think it's vital that he's kept on the Sandringham estate just so that he can't appear anywhere or say something stupid.
And there's also a welfare check element as well, in the fact that. He's had his shotguns taken away. He's, vicars and priests are passing through. He's obviously in quite a dark place.
Yeah, of course he is. And the pressure on a man who hasn't got much resilience because of his arrogance and unintelligence is enormous. So I think it's much better he's kept safely there.
My superstar paneler here, Hannah Kirkpatrick, Kane Blackwell, Thomas Corbett Dillon, and Father Calvin Robinson. So Father Calvin, this story gets darker by the day. There have been suggestions that there is worse stuff to emerge. And the fact that Lowney is now prepared to go on the record and say there was underage sex does seem to be a disturbing development. Could that be why Charles is now trying to push his brother into removing himself from the line of succession?
Yeah, it could be. And it sounds like there's some semantics at play when Prince Andrew says that he denies all illegality. If he's flying to foreign countries to have sex with underage girls, perhaps it's not illegal in those countries. I know France has a lower age of consent than we do, as one example. So maybe that he's playing with words, but it's the immorality of it that's important. If the 8th in line to the throne is flying around the world to have sex with underage girls, that is immoral, even if it's not illegal, and something needs to be done about that. Again, it's all allegations at this point. That's the problem. But if he wants to make life easier for his brother and for the monarchy and for the royal family, he should step down and remove himself from the line of succession. It's a clear, simple solution that I don't know why he wouldn't do it, really.
Well, Hannah Kirkpatrick, I mean, people say if you believe in hereditary monarchy, for example, Rafe Hadel Manku was here for the Clash last week and said, no, he's realistically not going to become king, but we can't start having a popularity contest when it comes to the line of succession.
Well, but I mean, obviously the allegations against him are just very, very serious and involving children, which I don't think anybody in this country can, forgive or look away from. The allegations are extremely serious if proven, and I just feel like with him there's just a little bit too much smoke for there to be no fire for the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, and the monarchy has to be above reproach. Like, there's just no other way. You just can't. It's like if these things are allowed and seem to be accepted, and it's okay, he's only 8th in line, we'll just leave him there, it doesn't matter what you peasants say, then I don't think they'd have much support left. And just on this fact, actually, I was thinking about there's a drip feed of all these files and everything being redacted all the time. I saw something from Restore Britain this week, which I thought was really interesting, with them vowing to release unredacted files about any British politician or businessman that's in there. So
yes, I thought that was great, actually. Restore Britain saying we're going to go the whole way because, of course, there are some issues and claims that Reform UK don't feel that way because its treasurer, Nick Candy, did have contact with Epstein and features in the Epstein files. Thomas Corbett-Dillon, how do you feel about this line of succession thing? I mean, is there not an argument that actually Charles shouldn't be asking his brother to remove himself? He should be using this to sort of reclaim his authority, and he should be saying to the Prime Minister, no, you've got to do this. And he should be making a public statement saying, no, we are going to remove Andrew from the line of succession.
Yeah, it'd be nice if the king were to act like a king for once. But no, I actually don't agree with any of this that's been happening. I don't even think he should have had his title taken away. I think this is a larger attack on the monarchy altogether. What this is setting the precedent that you can remove titles, you can force people to step down, you can force people out of the line of succession. Monarchy is not a form of democracy. It is not a voted pool. We are supposed to believe that these people are anointed by God to rule over the Anglo people. And for the mob, the media, to say that actually he shouldn't be in the line. He was born of a woman that we supposedly believe was anointed by God to rule over the Anglo people. So for them to just be kicking people out left, right, and centre, I think what this is a bigger attack on monarchy altogether. They want there to be no kings anywhere in the world, and they're destroying the biggest monarchy in the world right now. So, you know, obviously Andrew's done horrible things. No one is defending him, but there is a difference between, you know, push him away, put him into outside life, but you cannot start messing with the monarchy and the rules that have been in place for thousands of years.
See, Thomas Corbett-Dillon, this is super interesting, right? And I have a lot of sympathy for that argument, and I've thought hard about this. And I know, by the way, that there are a lot of Outspoken viewers who are royalists and who are monarchists who completely agree with you. Then there are lots of Outspoken viewers who are disgusted by King Charles's capitulation when it comes to the issue of Islam and want him to go. So it's really interesting, this divide. But I just want to put one counter argument to you, Thomas, because as I say, I've really thought long and hard about this. And I didn't just come to my position on the line of succession as I think some in the mainstream media have, as you've said, as a way to sort of just treat the monarchy like we treat politicians. And it comes down to Harry and Meghan, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Because, Thomas, here's the issue. If there were to be a terrible, tragic accident that wiped out the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children, which of course we hope and pray will never happen, but there is a reason why the late Queen Elizabeth II and King Charles III still to this day beg and plead with William not to take his children on a helicopter because they are so concerned about this possibility. And before the late Queen Elizabeth II died, she was concerned about this possibility too. If there was ever a situation where that family was lost or that family decided to renounce their titles or whatever, and we were left in a position where we had King Harry and Queen Meghan Markle, the monarchy is over. Overnight, right? It like the practicality of that is that the British public simply would not accept it. They would not accept a King Harry and a Queen Meghan Markle. I know that. And so then the British royal family ends anyway. And so, see, my argument is that we actually have to go one step further and change up what the line of succession actually means. And I do think there's a simple way around it, Thomas, which is that you could just have working members of the royal family in the line of succession. So you'd have to be a blood royal still, yes, but you would have to also be a working member. So that would boost above Prince Harry and Andrew, Princess Anne and Prince Edward, which I think also would be popular.
If I could jump in,
please.
The divine right of kings doesn't extend to princes and people in the line of succession. There's nothing divine about Prince Andrew's claim to the throne. The divine right of kings is the authority given to kings when they are consecrated in a Christian service, and they are consecrated for God to rule on behalf of God, to rule the people. So he's a servant of the people and a servant of God. The line of succession has always been altered by us. The fact that we married our princes and princesses to princes and princesses of other lands was a way of manipulating that line of succession so that we'd keep royal lineage throughout. So it's completely within the realm of divine right of kings to say that actually Prince Andrew should step aside and decline his position in that line of succession.
Thomas?
Look, I know that obviously it's complicated, but I think here there's one thing to remember, that to be a monarchist is not about the British royal family. It is a form of government that I truly believe is the best form of government in the world. And what happens in your scenario, if Harry did become the king, then that is the right of the people to rise up and overthrow him and find a new king. That's how it works. You rule with the right of the people. If you upset the people, they turn against you, you lose the throne. So, you know, this idea that it's about the British and what happened if this. No, this is about a form of government that has been proven time and time again to be the best form of government around the world. Look at what's happening in Saudi Arabia, where they have a king. The country is doing fantastically well. They're able to appoint things and build bridges and appoint all of these amazing construction projects that England couldn't even dream of doing. We can't even build a new motorway in England. So, you know, to have a king that can actually be absolute power, I think is one of the greatest ways
wouldn't be
to get
Harry,
out of this
though.
hell of democracy where nothing happens.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't be Harry. Kane Blackwell, you've been listening. Who do you agree with here?
Well, I actually agree with Calvin on this one, because I think that, I mean, you have to look back at history. The monarchy has adapted, evolved. I mean, 400 years ago, would anyone even know about a king or a prince doing anything untoward like this? It happened all the time. People, you know, princes and dukes and whatever, you know, were doing all sorts of dirty business. And at the end of the day, the monarchy changes and adapts. And I take Thomas's point about, you know, if people aren't happy with them, they can rise up and blah, we can have a new king. But let's be practical here. If, let's say, there was a King Harry and a Queen Meghan, and people were to rise up and say, we don't want this, let's be frank, we would not then get another monarchy. There would be a huge push for a republic. There would be, you know, the monarchy would have gone through the worst PR disaster that anyone has ever seen. And do you think the country is then going to go, oh yeah, we'll have another one? I just don't think that would happen. So I think for its own self-preservation, Prince Andrew has to step aside. If he doesn't do it for himself, he needs to do it for his mother, because what she gave to this country for all of those years was the service, dedication, and love. And she protected him for a long time. And now he has to repay that and step aside and make sure that, like his great uncle did, when he abdicated, when he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson. You know, it was a huge constitutional crisis, but at the end of the day...
Exactly, and it gave us Queen Elizabeth II. You know,
exactly.
so it can work out. Some controversy today, by the way. Thomas, interested to know what you think about this. Bernie Spoffworth posting, why is the royal family rolling out the British royal treatment for the leader of Nigeria, who was elected on a controversial Muslim ticket and has faced long-standing corruption allegations, while thousands of Christians are being killed in attacks targeting their faith? Genuine question. Seriously, why is this happening? What's the point? We'll look past ongoing attacks on Christians. And I mean, this is obviously not the choice of the royal family, Thomas, but, you know, William and Catherine have been with the Nigerian leaders today, and the optics aren't great.
No, they're not great. And, you know, I think one of the only hopes for England is that Prince William might secretly be a conservative and might actually start acting like a king and pushing back on some of the things. I mean, it truly is the last hope of England. If not him, then all eyes are on George. But, you know, that's a long way off. I think England will be long gone by then. But, you know, there is hints. He likes his football. So maybe William is going to stand up and be a true king, because they need to stand up to the government and say, we don't want to be meeting with these people. But currently, they have no choice. They do whatever the government tells them to do.
Yeah,
I mean, we did fight a civil war about, you know, the sovereignty of Parliament, and the fact that, you know, we did have a civil war over this. I mean, it's been gone for hundreds of years now. I mean, quite frankly, the idea that the king and whoever it is needs to come up and say, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, then they, quite frankly, they could say any law that was passed by the elected House of Commons, sorry, we don't want to do that because we don't like it. You know, if, for example, a conservative right-wing government, small c conservative government comes in the next election, then, and you have, for example, King Charles, who's a quite out and out huge environmentalist, and we say we want to drill for oil now, we're gonna frack and drill for oil in the North Sea. He says, oh, sorry, I'm not going to do that now. Would you be okay with that? Like that, this is where, like, I think that argument about, we need a strong king. Of course, we need a strong monarchy, but I don't want the king coming up and saying, oh, I believe you should be doing this and you should be doing that. Quite frankly, they are head of state. They're there to unite the country, not tell us what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I want Charles out of politics, like, for very good reason.
To be fair, though, this is where Thomas is right. A good monarchy is a sovereign monarchy. A constitutional monarchy doesn't work because we just point him around like a puppet. And to have them meeting the Nigerian president when Nigeria is literally persecuting Christians and we're a Christian country, that's very sad optics. But an absolute monarchy would be preferential to all other forms of constitutional monarchy, because democracy is fake and gay, really and truly. Her Majesty the Queen could not say no to the euthanasia bills being pushed through. She couldn't say no to abortion up until birth. She couldn't say no to all things that are evil and against her faith and against the faith of the land, because she had no authority to do so, and she should have. And you're right that King Charles is a wet, centrist, green, globalist, but he won't be around for much longer. And I don't know if I have much hope in Prince William, but I do think Prince George will probably come all the way back around and be a good old-fashioned English monarch, but without any authority to do so, it's pointless.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate, isn't it? It's an interesting debate, but certainly the Andrew situation has not helped matters at all. Now, look, do stand by, Superstar Panel, because we are about to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But first, I just want to get to a bit of feedback, because there's been so much feedback, especially about this Islamist takeover of Trafalgar Square. Mandy Kumar says, show of dominance by Sadiq Khan and the Muslims, not allowed to do that in most Muslim countries, so it doesn't need to go ahead here. Go pray in your mosques or at home. Nylararance says, Zack Polansky is absolutely crazy and a liar. The fact anyone would follow him to run the country is mind-boggling. And on this whole issue of GB News, which we discussed in regards to Thomas Corbett Dillon's controversial appearance on the so-called Free Speech channel, Simon Last, who has been an Outspoken Plus member for 2 months, thank you, Simon, says, as we know, GB News is not as independent as it was. And that's definitely true, because when Father Calvin Robinson and I were there, it was absolutely not meant to be backing one political party. Remember, the Conservatives were in government at the time, and we fought against the Conservatives every day when it came to issues like the COVID lockdowns. And Mackie B says, I've been saying for ages, I no longer trust GB News. Thank you for your super chats as well. Nina Vanava 6781, who's our #1 supporter at the moment. Thank you so much, Nina, says, hate Khan and Starmer. They have to go now. Enough is enough. Gibby Boy, thank you so much for your support too. And a lot of love for Father Calvin on the chat today. Kerry93, who's been an Outspoken member for 1 month, says, Father Calvin is amazing. I have so much respect for him. And 14 Barber says, could Father Calvin leave with a prayer for the United Kingdom? What do you think about that, Father C?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, remind us that we are a Christian country. Remind us to put you first in all things, and enable and encourage your people to stand up for you and to stand up for their country. Give us the strength, courage, and wisdom we need to be proud, patriotic Brits in Britain. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Love that. Great idea, 14. Thank you so much. Okay, a reminder of our nominees of today's worst person in the world, worst Briton in the world. So Father Calvin has gone for Sadiq Khan for Islamifying London. Thomas Corbett Dillon has gone for Tina Fey for her new UK adaptation of SNL, which he says, we just know it's going to be awful. I saw the trailer, it looks awful. And Kane Blackwell has gone for Rachel from Accounts for praising Canada and Norway for increasing their oil and gas production while the UK public have to deal with some of the highest energy bills in the world. And the results are in. I have to say, it wasn't even close today. Good Lord. Tina Fey got 1% of the vote. Even Rachel from Accounts, who, you know, very often wins this, nominated by Kane, just 9%. Because 89% of you have decided that Sadiq Khan is the worst Briton in the world today. Our Union jackass after that Islamist show of domination in Trafalgar Square. I mean, makes sense. It makes sense. And Hannah Kirkpatrick has nominated Tommy Robinson as today's greatest Briton. Do you want to explain why, Hannah?
Well, yeah, I mean, how wonderful that I actually nominated him yesterday, and he's all over the news today.
It was good
Dripping out of
timing.
Keir Starmer's mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but it was actually before Starmer, wasn't it? Because you were more interested in this trip that he's making to the United States.
I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the content he's been putting out, and he's a workhorse. He doesn't stop. But on a personal note, I don't know if people know, he is my husband's best friend. And I hear behind the scenes, and I'm allowed to say this, and he sounds like a different person. He does sound different anyway on voice notes, but he just sounds in a really good place. And it's just great to see. And tomorrow he's actually speaking to members of Congress, presenting Islam in Britain and basically where we've gone wrong as a bit of a warning. So yeah,
he's doing so well, but we don't want to lose him permanently. But obviously, he might be able to do more. He might be able to do more in the USA. Thomas, are you picking up this idea that Americans are really embracing Tommy Robinson? It certainly feels that way.
Yeah, well, this is the place to be. And I'm so happy he's here. He's really been embraced.
Father
by the
Calvin's
Americans,
there as well. God.
I know, we're all here. They embrace you in a way that we're not used to in England, because there really is freedom of speech. They actually let you say what you think. And sometimes you're sort of at a dinner party, whatever, you're like, oh my gosh, I can let you say anything. It's amazing. So I'm sure he's having a great time, but he's been really welcomed by people here that in the same way that England just shun him terribly, he's been welcomed, and people appreciate all the hard work he put in. For years, by the way, getting no views, getting completely banned from everything, and now all of a sudden he's actually successful. So, the credit goes to him for working so hard for so long.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, credit to all of you as well. Stateside, Thomas Corbett, Dylan Thomas, people have loved you a lot since those GB News comments. Where can people follow you? Where can people see more of your work?
I'm on Twitter, at @TCorbettDylan is me.
Amazing. And Father Calvin Robinson, he is, of course, the host of Reclaim the Media's Fox and Father, a much loved show. Hannah Kirkpatrick, she runs Hannah's World, which is absolutely brilliant. Must follow for brilliant news analysis. And Kane Blackwell, what about you? Where can people find you?
People can find me on X at Kane_Blackwell.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you all so much. Brilliant show. Really appreciate it. And we're moving over to Substack, actually, now. We will continue the conversation in the Royal Uncancelled After Show. P. Diner, the royal YouTube sensation, is standing by. We have brand new revelations from this Tom Bower book, Betrayal, revealing shocking new things about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. So do come and join us there at www.outspoken.live. Please do subscribe as well. The live count, you can see it right now in the corner of the screen. And we're on this mission to get to 700,000 subscribers. So if you hit the subscribe button, the other thing I just asked you to do is turn on the notification bell, and then you're alerted to our new episodes. We are also available as a podcast too on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And do please rate and review. But thank you so much for your company today. We will be back 5 p.m. UK time tomorrow. That is 1 p.m. Eastern at the moment, 10 a.m. Pacific, because of this annoying sort of in-between daylight saving period where the UK hasn't changed its clock. So just a couple more weeks. It's 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.